That's not it's not because he's
We'll
lazy.
turn it over to you. I guess, court, sorry, sir, you can gavel us to.
It's now in session. Gentlemen, we are here today for closing arguments. During closing arguments, you can actually argue. So this is where you can tie the evidence together, okay, and make your last chance. Give it your all. If this were a jury, you would be playing to the jury. Remember, there are no ladies and gentlemen here except me that are deciding, so you play to me, okay? All right, are you ready, prosecution?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
All
ma'am.
right. I'll remind you that prosecution has the burden of proof here.
Yes, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, Your Honor, we've heard the defense's argument, but let us go back and re-examine the points that have been made in this case. Mr. Holmes was a respectable young man who showed up to church regularly. He had two very respectable parents, one nurse, and another doctor in neurobiology. He was more than average in school. In fact, he graduated from the University of California, Riverside in the top 1% of his class. He was even a member of several honor societies, including Phi Beta Kappa and Golden Key, both very socially active communities. He never had any traumatic events as a young boy or a young adult. This is proven through his pastor and the academic dean at UCLA at Riverside. Let us examine the systematic and intelligent purchases of the weapons. Mr. Holmes purchased 3 different weapons at 3 separate times at 3 separate locations. This was clearly an act to avoid suspicion of the law. He purchased a handgun that was small and concealable. He purchased a shotgun that had a wide spread and could eliminate many civilians at once. And lastly, he purchased a high-powered rifle in order for any long-distance shots. All of these guns were purchased with a specific intent to inflict maximal damage upon his victims. He purchased over 700 rounds of ammunition, which were not normal rounds, but were specially made to go through metal and other objects such as chairs and pillars. He shot every last round at the theater. Now, a madman wouldn't try to escape, nor would he even have an escape plan. Mr. Holmes had a complex, pre-planned escape. He was in a SWAT uniform to disguise himself as one of the first responders in the chaos that he had created. He packed a first aid kit in case of injury. Not only this, but in his journal, he specifically wrote that his theater had the longest response time. It would be optimal for him and his needs to inflict maximal damage and still give him time to escape. The only thing preventing the escape was the arrival of the police, in which he now sits in this very room, pleading insanity. Or maybe he was too preoccupied shooting all 700 rounds of ammunition at the innocent civilians. Looking back at the defense's witnesses, we can see many flaws. There was a psychiatrist that only spoke to Holmes after the crime, and his girlfriend of a few months, whom we met at a social study group. To look at the psychiatrist, it is not hard to find flaw. In fact, she has proven our case. She said verbatim, he knew he was in the wrong. She had never seen Holmes before the incident, and the only interaction with him took place after the crime had been committed. And she never specifically diagnosed him with a mental disorder. Her only comment on the matter was, he had psychosis. Examining the second witness, his ex-girlfriend, it was said that she was close to him, and knew that and heard his problematic thoughts and ideas. On questioning, she didn't even know her boyfriend took medication. The defense said he wouldn't share such personal information with her due to privacy. Well, if she doesn't know about the medication he was taking daily, then the defense is right. They were not close enough or personal, and her statement about their conversations lose validity. Finally, the most crucial piece of evidence, Mr. Holmes' journal. His journal holds every step and intelligent thought about his crime. It was premeditated. He picked the theater that would take the police the longest to get to. He checked the theater before the crime, and he eliminated the rooms with too many exits. He finally picked the perfect location. He didn't want to shoot children, which doesn't make sense because an insane man wouldn't know the difference between an adult life and a child's life. Anyways, he chose a midnight showing, so there would be less children present. He's parked in a specific spot that was easily accessible to the theater and would offer the best route for escape. He entered the theater with his assortment of weapons that suited his needs at a specific scene in the movie that had gunshots so it would confuse the audience and neighboring audiences. This was all planned in his journal. Every last move was planned. This premeditation clearly shows his sanity. Now the defense will say that his writing shows some sort of insanity. This is false. Holmes wrote that what is the meaning of life many times in his journal. He asked questions concerning death. The last time I checked, that is an existential question that is intelligent and not insane. Gandhi wasn't insane when he questioned life and its meaning. Why should Holmes be treated differently? Also, he sent his journal to his personal psychologist right before the crime. Why would he do such a thing? Because he knew his argument he had prepared for this very case. He sent his journal so others would say he was mentally unstable, but this plan is transparent. Only a sane person would do something as smart and planned as that. He's logical, he is rational, and that's anything but psychotic. Your Honor, their own witness, who is a psychiatrist, said that he knew he was in the wrong. His journal shows every planning step he took to commit this act of brutality. He had escape plans, he had strategy, he was in his own right mind. This man is not insane. He is malicious, he is brutal, he is ruthless, but he is not insane, just a murderer. If we let him get away with what he did because he is hiding behind the law, so will others. This case is even bigger than the poor victims that are already gone. It is about the future innocent lives that could be taken by someone who uses the same argument to hide their actions. Veronica Moser was a sweet and friendly 6-year-old. She loved school and she loved playing and had just started swimming lessons. I only know this by reading her obituary. I know this because the man right here took her life and is now saying that he should be excused from the penalty he deserves. Your Honor, the facts have been listed, the story has been told, it is the end of the line. This man is not insane, and he deserves the punishment as due. He knew what he was doing. It was just about killing and making himself feel better. Sane, guilty.
Your Honor, as I've sat in this courtroom for the past couple days, and as I just heard Mr. Pearson's closing statement, a quote came to mind. Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. What Mr. Pearson is doing today, what he has done all throughout this trial along with his defense team, is ignore the facts. The one key fact, the one fact that my client, Mr. James Holmes, suffers. He suffers every day from a severe psychosis disorder. We're ignoring the fact that we had a doctor, a paid professional, a psychiatrist, come onto the stand and tell us that she believes that James Holmes suffers from this disorder. That he has to live every single day and suffer with this disorder. Yes, he may be lucid at times, which he has been, and which it might show in his journal that he has been lucid. But there are those times when he could just snap instantly. He cannot control it. And that is what happened at the crime. He could not control what he did. And under Colorado law, it states, in order to plead insanity, that he cannot know right from wrong during the time of the act. He could have planned, he could have done all that, but at the time of the act, he did not know. He did not know what he was doing. It shows in the police reports. He was hazed when he was arrested. He was in a fog. It shows from the psychiatrist that Mr. Pearson called him. He explained to us what psychosis was. He explained that someone could come in and out of reality. But Mr. Pearson has been ignoring the one fact that Mr. Holmes is legally insane. The prosecution also brought the gun range owner, Mr. Borgi. Mr. Borgi said that he had a conversation with Mr. Holmes. He said that he tried to come in and buy ammo. He said that Mr. Holmes left a bizarre voicemail on his recording device. But that was all. There was no conversation. Mr. Holmes never entered the store. He never tried to buy ammo from Mr. Borgi. And that is where the prosecution is trying to twist this whole story. They're trying to make you believe in the things that didn't actually happen. What Mr. Borgi said is false, and the prosecution is lying. But ma'am, right now, my client, Mr. Holmes, he is in your hands. It is in your hands to decide whether he should live or die. Whether we should give this man the help that he deserves, the help that every human being deserves. He suffers from a mental disorder. We cannot put this crime on him. This crime is not caused by him. This crime is caused by a mental illness. The mental illness is what did the crime, not my client, Mr. Holmes. And it is your hands to decide that. It's in your hands to decide whether or not he should live or die. Whether or not the mental illness that is overcoming him is legit. It is in your power. And with that, I was some kids here.
Ma'am, would you like a brief adjournment so you can make your decision? Okay.
Yes. We'll take a 2 minute, so I can get my notes. All right, gentlemen. First of all, I think it's quite interesting that the first mention of schizophrenia was just made by the instructor. Psychosis is a very general term, and one of the problems with this case was that the insanity plea never explained what the psychosis was from which he is alleged to have suffered. Each psychosis would have different characteristics, correct? And therefore, I really did not see any evidence of a specific psychosis with which to even hang a insanity plea upon. In addition, I will say that for the first time, a police report was mentioned in closing. The decision maker must have a copy of all the evidence that is supposed to have been entered into evidence. I have not seen a police report. Okay? All right, so you can't mention something, I have no idea, so I cannot base my decision on that. Someone in your closing, the defense counsel has said that the decision is based upon, it is in the judge's hands. It's actually in the judge's hands to do two things. It's kind of like writing an essay, if I may say. It is based upon an assertion, which in this case is the rule of law, and the evidence, and how those two. It's the judge's job to see how the evidence presented comports with the law, and so it's the law that makes the decision based upon an analysis of how that evidence fits with it. What I have noted in this case is that I think both sides gave very spirited closings. One of the closing arguments, this is a rating factor more so I guess than a decision factor, but if I'm to make a decision, I have to make it on the evidence presented, and I will say that Defense's Exhibit 1 was very helpful to the prosecution's case. As I look through this, there is evidence in the journal of self-diagnosis, where someone looks like they've gone and done some research on schizophrenia. So there was a name psychosis, schizophrenia, in this journal, and it's self-diagnosis of a broken mind. Very well organized, bulleted, and thought out, and research you would expect from a Phi Beta Kappa. The plan that exists in here of the actual execution of the crime is very organized, even uses great vocabulary like venue, I love it, with very detailed and explicit, very, very good. You're very intelligent, I believe, sir. And your plan is very well organized and well thought out. And as I look at the law on what constitutes in Colorado as the test for insanity, is a person who is so diseased or defective in mind at the time of the commission of the act as to being capable of distinguishing right or wrong. And we have in the journal crazy concepts. There are other things written in the journal that suggest knowing the difference between right and wrong, as one of which, as the prosecution pointed out, the decision to not hurt children. In looking at the evidence, some of my main decision is based upon the fact that psychosis is too general on which to hang a defense without discovering what it was. Also, even though it is the prosecution's burden of proof to prove that this person is not insane, I think they have carried that burden by showing this rationality, this organization, and I do not think any evidence was offered to show anything about the time of the crime, there being any disorder. The journal was written both before and sent after, and there's nothing in here to indicate the exact time, and the planning seems to overrule a disordered or disorganized defective mind. It seems to be a mind that was quite intact. To be considered mentally diseased or defective, a condition must grossly and demonstrably impair a person's perception or understanding of reality. And for the theater shooting, the culpable, he has to not have a culpable mental state, and that would mean that he would need to be certain in his understanding that his actions were going to cause people to be murdered. I think the evidence of the escape plan, including the SWAT uniform, the first aid kit, I think all of those show that this person knew that what he was doing was something that would require an escape. I think his planning beforehand shows that he knew what he was doing. His mind does not seem to be, no evidence showing his mind is diseased. He's guilty of the crime.
You going to the downward place there, Mr. Lawson.
Alright, hold on.
Oh, I can't shoot him yet?
In the interest of time and grades, and the fact that the judge just wants to do it, we're going to hold sentencing right now.
Oh, good.
And in Colorado, the sentence for this crime of 700 lost souls, including a 6-year-old child,
Veronica.
would be,
Thinking swimming lessons.
is it electric? No, it is lethal injection.
All right.
I choose.
Well, I'll get a
I don't even
hypodermic.
believe in the death
All right,
penalty,
hey.
but Lawson, it's you, so.
Let's give our judge a big hand. Thank you very much. Thank you very much
You're
for coming down
welcome.
and videoing that.